Greetings to everyone, wherever you are and whatever hour it may be. Today, I invite you to step inside a world shaped by fear, illness, and uncertainty. The life of a plague doctor. From his first days of study to the years when death walked openly through the streets, you will follow one man's path from beginning to end. For the next 40 minutes, you will hear a story about duty, isolation, and a fragile attempt to stand between life and death. This text is voiced by AI, yet I hope the atmosphere and meaning will feel alive to you. And now, settle in. Let the modern world loosen its grip. Let the hum of machines and distant voices fade into nothing. We are going back to a world where time is measured not in minutes, but in bells, candles, and the slow passage of daylight across stone walls. A world where the night is truly dark, where streets are narrow, and where the smell of human life hangs constantly in the air. It is the year 1346, and you live in the city of Florence, in the heart of northern Italy. The city is loud, crowded, and alive. Somewhere nearby, a church bell marks the hour, its sound rolling across tiled rooftops. Below, the streets are already busy. Merchants shout prices, carts creak under the weight of grain sacks, and animals move among people as freely as other humans. There is no separation between living space and working space here. Tanners scrape hides in open courtyards. Bakers fire ovens beside their homes. Waste is thrown into the street and carried away by rain pigs or time. You are a physician, not a famous one, not yet. You studied medicine at a university, perhaps Bologna or Padua, where knowledge still rests heavily on the writings of Galen and Hippocrates. You were taught that the body is governed by 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Health is balance. Illness is imbalance. You learn to read urine by its color, taste the air for signs of corruption, and consult the stars before making a diagnosis. You carry your learning in your head, your tools in a leather satchel, and your reputation in the hands of your patients. Before the plague, your life is predictable. You treat fevers, infected wounds, stomach pains, childbirth complications. You prescribe herbs, bloodletting, poultices, prayers. Payment is irregular. Sometimes you are paid in coin, sometimes in bread, sometimes not at all. You live modestly, respected, but not powerful. Death is common, but familiar. People die of infection, injury, childbirth, and age. Children die often. No one is surprised by it. In the winter of 1347, rumors arrive before the disease does. Sailors speak of entire crews dying at sea. Merchants whisper of cities far to the east where bodies lie unburied in the streets. Some say it came from Cathay. Others blame the Tartars. Some claim poisoned wells. Others speak of God's anger. The stories are inconsistent, but they all share one detail. Death comes quickly. By the spring of 1348, the rumors become reality. The first cases appear near the docks: men with sudden fevers, painful swellings in the groin and armpits, dark blotches beneath the skin. You examine one such man by candlelight. His breath smells sweet and rotten at the same time. His pulse races beneath your fingers. By morning, he is dead. Within weeks, the city changes. Church bells ring constantly. The streets grow quieter, then louder with grief. The smell of decay begins to overpower the usual odors of waste and smoke. Entire households fall ill at once. You see mothers nursing children who are already dying. You see strong men collapse in the street and never rise again. Your training offers you theories, but no solutions. You bleed patients. You burn incense. You recommend fleeing the city, though you know most cannot. You wear herbs around your neck and advise others to do the same. Nothing stops it. By the summer, death is no longer an event. It is a condition of life. It is during this time that the city authorities come to you with a proposal. They need men willing to enter infected homes, men willing to examine the sick, record deaths, and advise on containment, men who will remain when others flee. You understand the risk immediately. You also understand that someone must do this work. This is how you become what the city will soon call a plague doctor. The decision does not feel heroic. It feels practical, almost dull. The city is dying, and someone must move through its dying parts. You are offered payment, modest but reliable, drawn from emergency funds hastily approved by the city council. More importantly, you are granted a kind of protection. Papers bearing official seals, permission to pass through quarantined streets, authority to enter homes others now fear. At first, nothing about your appearance changes. You wear the same woolen robe, the same leather shoes, the same satchel of instruments. But the work itself transforms you quickly. Your days begin at dawn. You rise to the sound of bells, not calling people to prayer anymore, but announcing another death. The bells no longer ring singly. They toll in clusters, overlapping, sometimes without pause. You eat simply, if you eat at all. Bread, watered wine, whatever you can manage before stepping back into the streets. Florence is no longer the city you knew. Shops stand shuttered. Homes are marked with crude symbols, chalk crosses, scraps of cloth tied to doors, signs warning others away. Entire neighborhoods smell different now, not just unclean, but sick. The air feels thick, as if it resists breathing. People believe the disease rides on foul vapors, miasmas rising from rotting matter. You have been taught the same. You walk with herbs pressed under your nose, rosemary, mint, cloves, anything sharp enough to cut through the stench. Your duties are simple to describe and impossible to endure. You examine the sick. You confirm the dead. You advise families who no longer listen. You record names, ages, addresses. You tell people to stay inside their homes, to avoid contact, to burn bedding and clothing if they can afford to. Most cannot. You learn quickly how the disease moves. A house falls ill, then the neighboring house. A street follows. A parish collapses. The swellings, buboes, appear suddenly, sometimes the size of an egg, sometimes larger, blackened and angry beneath the skin. When they burst, the smell is overwhelming. When they do not, the patient usually dies faster. You try everything your training allows. Bloodletting, meant to rebalance the humors. Lancing the buboes to release corrupted matter, poultices of figs and onions, vinegar washes, prayers spoken softly at bedsides. You note the results carefully. Almost none survive. By midsummer, the city council introduces new measures. Infected houses are sealed. Guards are posted at doors. Families are locked inside together, sick and healthy alike. Food is delivered when possible. More often, it is forgotten. You are called to inspect these houses from the outside, to confirm death through closed shutters, listening for movement, for breath, for cries. It is around this time that your attire begins to change. Someone, no one remembers who, suggests that perhaps the doctor should not dress like everyone else, that perhaps you should be marked, made distinct, protected in some way from the corrupted air. The idea spreads. Craftsmen are commissioned. Tailors, leather workers, mask makers. What emerges is strange, unsettling, and soon unmistakable. A long, waxed coat, usually leather, designed to repel moisture and filth. Gloves pulled tight at the wrists, boots sealed and high, and most importantly, the mask. It is shaped like a bird's beak, long and hollow. Inside it, herbs and spices are packed tightly, lavender, camphor, myrrh. The beak keeps the foul air at a distance, or so the theory goes, allowing it to be purified before reaching your lungs. Small glass lenses protect your eyes. Your own face disappears behind this artificial creature. The first time you put it on, you barely recognize yourself. When you step into the street dressed this way, people react immediately. Some stare, some flee. Children cry. You are no longer simply a physician. You are a symbol, an omen. Where you go, death has already arrived, or soon will. Your work intensifies as the plague reaches its peak. You visit dozens of homes a day. You stop counting the dead. You stop remembering faces. You learn to speak gently, efficiently. You learn how to stand in a room without touching anything. You learn how to leave quickly. At night, you return to your lodging and scrub yourself raw with vinegar and water. You burn your clothes when you can replace them. You sleep lightly. Dreams are filled with bells, swollen flesh, and the sound of doors being sealed from the outside. This is no longer medicine as you knew it. This is containment, documentation, endurance. And slowly, almost without realizing it, you begin to understand that the city is not trying to save itself anymore. It is trying to survive long enough for the plague to end. By the autumn of 1348, the plague is no longer a wave crashing through the city. It is the sea itself, surrounding everything. The rhythm of life has collapsed into a single monotonous pattern: illness, death, removal. There are days when the sun rises into a sky already heavy with smoke from funeral fires, and sets without you ever realizing the time has passed. You no longer move through Florence as an individual. You move as a function. The mask changes how people speak to you. Voices are quieter now, restrained, as if the beak itself might carry infection. When families open their doors to you, they do so reluctantly, standing as far back as the narrow rooms allow. Many will not let you cross the threshold. You examine patients from a distance, gesturing, asking questions that are answered in hoarse whispers. You become skilled at diagnosis without touch, the color of skin, the pattern of breathing, the way a person looks at you or does not. You learn to recognize death hours before it arrives. You also learn to recognize false hope, the brief rally before collapse that tricks families into believing recovery has begun. The city authorities have expanded your role. You are no longer only a physician. You are now an inspector of plague houses. You carry lists provided by parish clerks, names scratched hurriedly onto parchment. You confirm which houses are infected, which are empty, which have gone silent. The dead are everywhere. At first, families tried to bury their own. They wrapped bodies in sheets, carried them to churches, paid for prayers. That system collapsed within weeks. There are too many corpses, too few priests, too little time. The city organizes removal instead. You see the carts before you smell them. Long wagons pulled by exhausted animals, piled high with bodies stacked like firewood. Men known as bikini, corpse carriers, do the work. They wear rough clothes soaked in vinegar. Some are prisoners offered reduced sentences. Others are the desperate poor. Many die within months. Your job is to certify the dead before they are taken. You walk from body to body, lifting cloth from faces you do not recognize, and some you do. You mark tallies. You watch as mothers beg the carriers to be gentle. You watch as bodies are tipped into mass graves beyond the city walls, layered with lime. The fear changes people. Some abandon their families at the first sign of illness. Others refuse to leave infected homes, sealing themselves inside out of devotion or terror. There are stories of entire households found dead, locked from within. There are stories of people collapsing in the street and being stripped of their clothes by passers-by who no longer believe theft matters. Religion intensifies, then fractures. Processions form, men and women walking barefoot through the streets, whipping themselves in public penance. They believe pain might appease God. The city tries to stop them, fearing the gatherings spread disease. Preachers shout from street corners, blaming sin, foreigners, Jews, astrologers. You are instructed to avoid such gatherings. Your job is not judgment, it is observation. At some point you realize you have stopped flinching. The first weeks, every death felt heavy, each child, each familiar face. Now, death registers differently. It is information, a fact to be noted and passed along. This realization disturbs you more than the bodies ever did. Your own health becomes an obsession. Every itch, every ache is examined with professional dread. You watch your urine each morning, its color, its clarity. You sniff the air constantly, searching for corruption. You sleep with sachets of herbs around your head. You avoid touching your face. You avoid touching anything whenever possible. Despite everything, you survive. You document symptoms that appeared late, forms of the disease that killed in hours instead of days. Cases without buboes at all, where blood blackened in the lungs and death came swiftly through suffocation. You do not know it yet, but you are describing different manifestations of the same disease. At night, you remove your mask and study it by candlelight. The leather is cracked, the lenses are scratched, the beak still smells of herbs and vinegar, and something else you cannot quite name. You wonder how long you will need to wear it. You wonder what will remain of you when you no longer do. By the summer of 1349, Florence is no longer collapsing. It is reshaping itself around the damage. Streets that once overflowed with people now feel unnaturally wide. Entire trades have vanished, not because demand is gone, but because the men who practice them are dead. Bells ring for births again, though quietly, as if afraid to draw attention. You are still called a plague doctor, even though the worst has passed. The title has outlived the emergency. It now describes a kind of knowledge, a person who has seen the plague closely and lived. That alone gives your words weight. Your duties are different now, but no less heavy. You are summoned to disputes over property, to confirm deaths that occurred months ago and were never properly recorded. You testify in front of city officials, your notes used to decide who inherits what remains of a family. You examine bodies that have been exhumed from shallow graves, identifying marks, clothing, rings. The dead continue to shape the lives of the living. You are also asked to advise on prevention, though the word is still not fully formed. Should markets be spaced farther apart? Should waste be moved beyond the walls? Should ships be held in harbor longer before unloading? You give cautious recommendations. Some are followed, many are not. People are tired of fear. The mask becomes less common. Some doctors abandon it entirely. You do not. You have worn it too long. It feels like armor now, less against disease than against memory. There are those who resent you. Some believe doctors caused the plague by disturbing the humors. Others believe you profited from death. A few accuse plague doctors of spreading sickness intentionally, paid by the city to thin the population. You learn to walk carefully, to avoid certain streets at night. And yet, gratitude exists too. Survivors stop you to press food into your hands, bread, eggs, sometimes a coin. They thank you not for cures, but for presence, for entering homes when others fled, for speaking calmly when everything else was chaos. You notice changes in yourself. Your sense of smell is dulled. Some odors barely register anymore. You sleep lightly, waking at the smallest sound. You find silence uncomfortable. You have grown used to bells. Your understanding of medicine has shifted. You no longer believe balance alone explains illness. You have seen too many patterns, too many clusters. You suspect something passes from person to person, though you cannot say how. You do not speak this thought aloud. It would sound like heresy or madness. You write anyway. You compile your observations into a long account. Symptoms, progressions, environmental conditions. You note that those who handled the dead most often seem to fall ill faster. That crowded homes suffered more than isolated ones. That some survivors never became sick again. You do not have language for immunity, but you describe it carefully. Years later, someone may read this. For now, it is simply how you make sense of what you have seen. By 1350, the plague returns in smaller waves, not as devastating, but persistent. Like an echo. You are called back into full duty more than once. Each time you put on the mask without hesitation. Each time, fewer people panic. They have learned what panic does. Life resumes in altered form. Wages rise because workers are scarce. Laws are passed to force laborers back into old pay scales. They resist. Society strains. You treat injuries from street fights, from overwork, from hunger, in a land that paradoxically has more food than mouths to eat it. You are older now, not in years, but in weight. When you look into a mirror, you see the lines left by the mask around your eyes. You see a face that has watched too much and learned restraint as survival. The plague will never truly leave Europe. It will return again and again in the centuries to come. You do not know this, but you sense something has changed permanently. Death has become visible. and so have you. By the year 1351, the city no longer speaks of the plague in the present tense. It is spoken of as something that happened, even though it still lingers in corners, flaring briefly before retreating again. Language itself begins to change around it. People say, before the sickness and after, as if a line has been drawn through time. You live on the far side of that line now. Your role has settled into something quieter, more ambiguous. You are no longer summoned daily, but you are never truly dismissed. When a sudden fever appears, when swellings are noticed, when a household grows fearful, your name still passes from mouth to mouth. You arrive, observe, reassure when possible, isolate when necessary. Isolation has become accepted. Houses close their doors willingly now. Windows open more often. People sleep farther apart. Some habits born of terror have become custom. Others fade quickly, abandoned in relief. You notice which ones remain. The city itself bears scars. There are empty lots where houses once stood, dismantled after entire families died, and no heirs remained. Monasteries are understaffed, guild halls echo. Cemeteries have expanded beyond their walls, bodies layered deep beneath hastily consecrated ground. In some places, the earth still sinks slowly as mass graves settle. You are asked to advise on new burial practices. Shall graves be deeper? Should bodies be wrapped in lime-soaked cloth? Should burial grounds be moved farther from wells? You answer as best you can, guided not by certainty but by memory. What seemed to coincide with survival? What did not? The mask hangs unused more often now. When you do wear it, people stare again, but differently. No longer in panic, in recognition. You have become a reminder of endurance, of loss, of what they survived. You begin teaching, not formally, not in a university hall, but informally, to apprentices, to younger physicians who avoided the city during the worst years. They listen carefully as you speak of symptoms they have never seen. You correct their assumptions gently. You tell them what theories failed and which at least seem to help. Some resist. Galen is still Galen. Authority is slow to yield. Others listen. You show them your notes, your careful dates, the way you tracked households, the way you marked spread. You encourage them to observe first, conclude later. This, more than any remedy, feels important. Privately, you are haunted, not by single deaths, but by scale, by the realization that tens of thousands vanished and that life continued anyway. You struggle with this truth more than with fear. You walk streets once packed with people and feel disoriented by the space. Sometimes you remove the mask and press it to your chest, breathing in the smell of old herbs and leather. It brings no comfort, only memory. Your body carries reminders too. Your joints ache. Your lungs burn in cold air. You suspect long exposure to incense smoke and vinegar has done its damage. You cough at night. You wonder occasionally whether the plague marked you invisibly, sparing your life but not your strength. Still, you live. Others did not. As the years pass, the plague becomes part of the world's rhythm, not constant, but expected. Cities develop protocols, quarantines become official, ships are held offshore. The word quaranta, 40 days, enters common speech. You recognize the shape of these ideas. They were born in panic, in observation, in failure. You had a hand in that, however small. When people ask you now what it was like, you hesitate. There is no simple answer, no single image. It was not only death, it was confusion, adaptation, learning under pressure, watching beliefs crack and reform, watching society bend without fully breaking. You tell them fragments about the bells, about the carts, about the silence that followed, and you watch their faces as they try, and fail, to imagine it. Time stretches forward unevenly after the plague, like a road hastily repaired. Some days feel almost ordinary. Others fold back on themselves without warning, triggered by a smell, a sound, a particular quality of light falling across stone. You continue practicing medicine, though what that means has changed. Patients still come with fevers, wounds, childbirth complications, the familiar troubles of the body. But every illness is now measured against a darker standard. Every cough raises suspicion. Every swelling is examined too closely. You notice that people no longer assume they will live. Survival has become conditional in their minds, something negotiated day by day. You are more careful than you used to be. You wash your hands more often, even when no one is watching. You air rooms before entering. You avoid crowded interiors instinctively. These habits feel natural now, though you cannot fully justify them using accepted theory. Experience has become its own authority. The city's relationship with death has changed as well. Before the plague, death was common, but private. It happened within families, within homes. Now it feels public, communal, almost administrative. Death registers are kept more carefully. Parish clerks write faster, with smaller letters. Names blur together. You sometimes read through these lists, tracing familiar surnames. Entire lineages end abruptly, ink stopping where people once continued. The church struggles to regain control of meaning. Priests preach about divine mercy instead of punishment now. Too many good people died for punishment to explain everything. Confessionals fill again, but confession has changed. People speak less of sin, more of fear, of abandonment, of surviving when others did not. You listen more than you speak. Occasionally, someone asks whether the plague will return as it did before. You answer honestly, it may, it likely will. Not everywhere, not all at once. But it has entered the world now, and the world will have to learn how to live with it. This answer rarely comforts. You notice new professions emerging, men who specialize in corpse removal, even outside outbreaks, inspectors who examine ships, officials tasked solely with monitoring sickness. None of this existed before. Now it feels necessary. Medicine itself begins to shift, subtly. You hear whispers of physicians in other cities questioning ancient texts, suggesting that observation might matter more than authority. That experience should sometimes outweigh tradition. These ideas are dangerous, but they persist. You feel an unexpected kinship with them. At home, your personal life is spare. You never married. Many did not. The imbalance between men and women is stark now. Families are rebuilt awkwardly, with gaps that never quite close. You keep few possessions. Most of what you own can be carried easily. You learn the value of readiness. Some nights you dream of the early days, not the worst of it, but the beginning, the first cases, the moment before everything changed. In the dream, you always think you can stop it this time. You always wake before you try. The mask remains. It hangs on a wooden peg by your door. You clean it occasionally, though there's no reason to. It has become a kind of boundary between then and now, between who you were and who you became. Children born after the plague stare at it with fascination. To them, it is a relic, something strange and exaggerated. They do not understand why adults fall silent when they see it. You are glad they do not understand. As you age, your pace slows. You take fewer cases. You delegate when you can. Younger physicians step forward, confident, unscarred. You do not envy them. You simply hope they will learn without having to endure what you did. The city feels fuller now, louder. Life presses forward stubbornly, filling the spaces left behind. Markets thrive again. Festivals return. Laughter echoes where silence once ruled. And yet, beneath it all, something remains altered. The world no longer feels permanent. And neither do you. Age comes to you quietly, without ceremony. There is no single morning when you feel old, only a gradual narrowing of your world. You walk more slowly. You choose your steps carefully on worn stone streets. You rest more often, leaning against walls polished smooth by centuries of passing hands. You are aware now of how much of your life has been shaped by a few years of disease. People still recognize you, not always by name, but by reputation. He was there, they say. He saw it. The words carry weight, though you are never certain they should. Survival feels less like merit and more like chance. You spend more time indoors now, especially in winter. Your lungs protest cold air. Your joints stiffen. You keep small fires burning and windows cracked, a habit that unsettles visitors but comforts you. Fresh air feels necessary in a way you cannot fully explain. When illness appears in the city, even ordinary illness, the response is swift. Houses isolate themselves without being told. Neighbors leave food at doors. Bells ring again, briefly, cautiously. The memory has not faded. It has only softened at the edges. You are consulted less often, but more respectfully. When officials ask you questions now, they do so not expecting certainty, but perspective. They want to know how it felt last time, how quickly fear spread, which decisions worsened things, which helped, even slightly. You tell them what you can. That delay is dangerous. That denial costs lives, that people endure more when they are told the truth. Some listen, some do not. Authority still resists humility. You return often to your old notes. The parchment is yellowed, ink has faded, but the structure remains. Dates, locations, symptoms, outcomes. You realize, reading them now, how methodical you were in the midst of chaos, how carefully you tried to impose order on something that resisted it. You add marginal notes in a different hand, older, steadier. Reflections, corrections, doubts. You no longer believe the plague was a punishment, nor do you believe it was random. You suspect it followed rules you could not see at the time, rules hidden in bodies, in movement, in proximity. You will not live long enough to understand them. That knowledge belongs to another age. This no longer troubles you. One afternoon, a young physician visits you. He has traveled from another city. He has heard of your work. He asks about the mask, about the herbs, about the beak. He wants to know if it worked. You consider the question carefully. You tell him the truth, that the mask probably did little to stop the disease, that the distance it enforced may have mattered more, that fear, when shaped into habit, can become protection. That ritual can create space, and space can save lives. He writes everything down. You watch him leave and feel a strange relief. That night, you dream without bells for the first time in years. When you wake, the silence feels natural, not ominous. You take the mask down from its peg and place it on the table. You examine it slowly. The stitching, the cracks, the shape that once made children cry and adults pray. You realize you no longer need it. Not because the danger is gone, but because your work has changed. You have become something else now. Not a plague doctor, a witness. Your death does not come during an outbreak. There are no bells, no carts, no masks waiting at doors. It comes on a clear morning, quietly, in the way most lives once ended before the world learned to fear suddenness. You wake early, as you always do. Light filters through the shutters, thin and pale. The city is already moving beyond your walls, footsteps, distant voices, the ordinary persistence of life. Your breathing is shallow today, not painful, just limited. You sit for a while, aware of each breath as an individual act. You have spent a lifetime noticing bodies. You recognize the signs in your own without alarm. There is time. You rise slowly and cross the room. The mask rests where you left it, on the table. It has not been worn in years. You run your fingers over it one last time. The leather is dry now, fragile, like you. You do not put it on. Instead, you open the window wider. Cold air enters, clean air, the kind you once feared, then learned to trust. The city smells of bread, smoke, damp stone. Not vinegar, not death. You sit. Your thoughts drift, not to the worst moments, but to the small ones. A patient who recovered against expectation, a child who laughed when you removed the mask, a colleague who stayed when others fled. You think of how knowledge moved forward, not in leaps but in scars, in notes written under pressure, in habits born of fear that later became reason. You were part of that, not a hero, not a savior. A man who observed, endured, and remembered. Your final breath leaves you without struggle. When your body is found later, there is no panic. You are washed carefully, buried properly, not in haste, not in mass. Your notes are collected. Some are kept, others are lost. That is the way of things. Years later, practices you once followed instinctively will be written into law. Quarantines, distance, air, observation over assumption. No one will know your name when that happens, and it will not matter, because the world learned, and you helped it do so. If you have listened to the story to the end, it may mean that it was not so bad after all. I would be pleased if you considered giving this video a like or even subscribing to the channel. You are also welcome to leave your honest opinion about this episode in the comments. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.